What's up, everybody? We are going deep into goal setting for 2020 today, and we're starting this series off with a bang. We're taking a deep dive into the psychology around goal setting and why this is so important. So, very, very important topic. We've got a lot to get through, and we're also going to answer some questions about your specific goals. All that and more coming up right after this. Rocking and rolling. Welcome. If we haven't met, my name is Yanni Baumeister, and this is Unity Gym. We are the gym that teaches people how to become superhumans. Now, a lot of the amazing results we get for our tribe are due to the combination of strength and flexibility. And I always put a link in the description to this video where you can download our amazing UMS program blueprints. We give everything away for free because we're determined to do so, to give better stuff away that other people charge for. I haven't put the link in the description just yet, I just realised, but I will. To my left is Phil White, our resident physiotherapist and all-round good-looking guy. How are you today, Phil?
Very well, excited. I really like this topic. I think there's just so much time spent in the gym, and also as a physiotherapist, just seeing the way in which people approach rehab, and myself having been an athlete for many years, human nature really gets in the way of all athletic pursuits. Yep. And I think this topic, especially today on ego, is really key, because it's it can definitely take you from the path of going the smart, rational way to get best performance long term, and send you down a rabbit hole of pain and injury because the ego gets in the way, and maybe
absolutely.
Biggest cause of injury. So I think it's just so valuable today.
Yeah. Except that we may not talk about ego today, depending on how long we get. Cool. I'm going to go deep into the story first. Yep. But if we don't do ego today, it's going to be tomorrow. I want to give you guys a little bit of a little bit more info today, which is Thursday in Australia. I assume maybe Wednesday evening in America. I'm not sure. We're going to do psychology. Tomorrow we're going to finish up psychology, and then we're going to get into the other two areas that we were talking about, which is essentially the planning part and the execution part next week. But today and tomorrow's show, I believe personally is the most important, because it's a go, no-go situation. If you don't understand the way that your psychology can interfere with you achieving your goals, then you've got a very low probability of ever achieving those goals. And honestly, I've been really surprised with how many people have reached out excited about this series and the comments that we're getting. And I sent an email yesterday out to the guys that subscribe to our email list, our inner circle, and I got a lot of responses. So I'm super pumped, because it's a topic I really am fascinated by, and it's something that we've really hacked the system on this, because a lot of people, one of the things that a lot of people are saying in the comments and in the emails is, I've been wanting to know how you guys get so much done for so long. So cool, let's dive in. What do you reckon?
Keen. Yep. I'm also keen to, as a new business owner, I want to see how he does it.
Yeah, that's right.
These, juicy nuggets of information, and
so
head that direction.
Excuse me. You have to excuse me. I am going to cough from time to time, and my voice sounds a little bit strange. I almost lost my voice teaching a class last night because I'm still getting over a pretty hectic flu after flying back from Europe. So you just have to deal with it. And my amazing moon tan that's going on, Richie is tweaking it, and we've got him putting the the Bahamas glow on. He did put the Mars tan on before, so we looked a bit red, but that's all right.
Donald Trump impersonators over here.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so he can tweak that, and he's doing well with it too. We are going to play with a few different cameras, because I may get up and scribble some stuff on the whiteboard at some point through this series. So
getting high tech in 2020.
We are getting high tech. That's exactly right. So guys, first and foremost, welcome to everyone watching this stream on live. I do really want you guys to smash up the like button if you like this show, more so than ever before, because if you like this topic, because as I said, we plan to stretch this out over next week as well. But if we're not getting likes or interaction, then we're probably not. We're just going to change the topic, because I don't want to go deep into something that people aren't interested. We want to give
just
value.
Put Richie in front of a camera for
flexing
for 45 minutes, doing as many burpees as you can in 45 minutes.
How good would that be?
Just live stream.
By the way, on the note of burpees, on the topic of burpees, whoever left 20 kilos of dumbbells on my gym floor this morning from my tribe here. You owe me 20 burpees. And I'm going to find out who it was. We're very passionate about putting our shit away here at Unity Gym afterwards. We're not children. We're all adults. No one's going to clean up after you. So whoever it was that left the two 10-kilo dumbbells out on the floor that I stubbed my toe on, I'm coming for you. Okay, back to topic. I'm on a butt kicking mood. I'm in a butt kicking mood this morning.
He is.
Phil knows why. Richie knows why. So watch out.
We're going to channel that energy into positivity.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
That's exactly right. Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand, and this is a really cool topic. If you dive into quantum physics and all sorts of things like that, then you'll start to sort of learn a bit about this. The human brain is very much like a computer, and we've got some of the most powerful computers. One of the most powerful computers that was switched on in 2018 is a quantum computer. Oh, it's not a quantum computer. They haven't got quite there yet, but it's solving problems much faster than anything else. I wish I could remember the name of the computer, but I can't. I wrote about it a little bit in my notes and in my blog for today. Anyway, what I want you guys to understand is, and I briefly mentioned this yesterday, our brains are very much like the computers that we use every day, meaning that they have software. Software is installed rapidly with our brains as we learn new things. Phil had a truckload of new software installed over the break while I was away, as he was really learning some of the new calisthenics moves for the very first time. And you'll often find this, like you have a software program for walking, you have a software program for managing everything in your life that you don't think of. And as that program becomes more and more updated, things become more and more autonomous to you. You don't have to think about it. Think about the logic of learning to drive a car for the very first time. Some of you who are watching may be able to relate to how scary and overwhelming that is in the first few instances when you get behind the wheel of a car.
Probably more so for my mum in the car than for me. I was having a great time.
That's right. Yeah, if you've ever taught anyone how to learn how to drive. But think about how autonomous that becomes after doing it for 10 or 15 years, you know. You can like, I don't know, it's very dangerous, but you can multitask whilst driving a car. You know, we have problems now with people sending text messages and doing all sorts of things, you know, but even from little benign tasks like, you know, choosing music, or I listen to audiobooks in the car.
I think the best example of it that kind of sums it up is like, sometimes you get to a place and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I don't remember the driving experience at all.
That's right, which is dangerous as fuck, but it becomes autonomous, okay? So going from not having a clue how to do this thing, and back in the day when I learned how to drive, you had to actually shift gears still, you know, and do work the clutch and do all sorts of different things. Nowadays that's almost obsolete, but you know, these things become autonomous. The same thing's happening for everything that you learn in your brain. Even the UMS progressions program, we have some pretty hectically advanced sort of movements like hand balancing and things like that. These things feel impossible when you're first learning them, and after you master them and that program is really solidified, that software is firmly installed in your operating system, a handstand is something that comes really easily and naturally. What I want you to really understand before we move forward is that you have programs, software for everything, including the way we determine things and the way we think about things. Therefore, your thought process, which is often now happening autonomously, is a program that you've created over the span of your life based on the things that you've experienced, you know. And a lot of the time we call that your story. The accumulation of the software that's been installed into your brain that processes your thought is your story.
Just a quick, a personal example for this is I was always a very sporty person in school, used to do very well in the cross country. I was sports captain, quite good at sports. And then every time the swimming carnival would come around, I would have a terrible time. I would come last, and I had this story in my brain that I was just, I just wasn't a swimmer. I was a sinker. I was just one of those people that, it just wasn't me. I didn't identify with swimming. I just thought it was horrible, and that made me anytime it came up, I kind of just, avoided it all. I love being in the water, hated swimming laps. And it'd get to the point where you start to smell the chlorine as you get into the pool, and that would get kind of anxiety within me, and I'd have to be worried about I'm not, I just really didn't like it. And then I guess 3 years ago, I I started doing a learn to swim program with my mum. And it changed my story around swimming. I started to realize that no, it wasn't a technique. I embraced being a learner. I embraced sucking at something. And I changed my story from this isn't me to this is like, a process that I can do this just like every other human. I'm like, okay, that person with one leg is beating me in races. Like a lady literally beat my mum in a race with no arms. Incredible. But, you can there's nothing that can stop you from that. So if you embrace, this new identity of I'm a learner, I'm going to embrace the process. And then now I love swimming and I swim like 3-kilometer ocean swimming races and have a good time. So I think that's just a kind of a personal example, because this can all sound very like out there and wild and voodoo, but just an example of how I changed my story around something and really changed.
And that's a really good example. And something that you said there, about the concept of changing your story, you just like your smartphone, your tablets, and not your like medicine tablets that you swallow, your smart devices, your iPads and things like that, and your laptop, you have to update the software in your brain if it's not serving you. And the first step to this is identifying whether the story might be inhibiting or restricting your progress in life and to where you want to get. Because 9 times out of 10, and I say this a lot to our members, if you want to change your physical appearance and working in a gym is very superficial. And I think this is maybe something easy for us to use as an example. If you're not as lean as you want to be, or not as strong as you want to be, or not as physically capable as you want to be, 9 times out of 10, you need to change the way you think, because the person that you envisage that you want to be, or you might be wanting to emulate or model, which is a great idea, get mentors, get people that you aspire to be like, but you got to start thinking like that person before you even start training like that person, because the training is such a small component of getting you to be like that person. The thinking and the thought process is the big part. That's the part that's going to enable you to avoid dropping off the wagon, avoid telling yourself some bullshit excuse that's going to prevent you from getting out of bed in the morning, that will stop you coming to the gym, avoid you eating the shit that you know you shouldn't be eating because it's not going to furnish your training and support your body composition goals and things like that, So the thinking comes first, and this is why I want to attack this today. So step number 1 is to just come to terms with and at peace with the fact that this is happening, whether you like it or not. You've got a story that has been created by your history, that's influenced by everything from your parents, your school, your religion and religious beliefs, your friends and your friendship circle.
What you've been told by health professionals. I just had
the media is a big one.
No, but health professionals as well. Like I just had a client come in then who has been a massage client for a long time, and I've always been sort of suggesting that maybe instead of doing massage, that we do stuff on the gym floor, because I think it has a big benefit. And she's like, I've had this hip pain for a long time, and she's like, but my chiropractor told me I have a leg length difference, and so her story was that it was something that she couldn't change. It was like this, it was something about, it was this injury identity we mentioned yesterday, and that the leg length problem is what's causing her hip pain, when really, she hasn't tried doing strength training. She hasn't challenged that story. It's always just been a barrier for her to, change her circumstance. But when I sort of explained that, maybe that wasn't such a relevant thing, and that if you, changed all the active structures around it and gave it a go. I challenged her story, and she agreed to switching out half of the massage for the gym floor, and we identified that there was a lot that could be improved there. And then, so it's sort of just kind of trying to rewrite and slightly guide that story. But what you hear from your friends, your family, even subconscious stuff that happens through your life, but especially from health professionals and trainers who say something from a professional maybe will become a bit more ingrained than others. So I think it's really important to think about where your information's coming from, and absolutely. And that's a huge one, because the influence, you can choose, and we're going to go deeper into this in the reprogramming that I'm going to talk about today, but you can choose who you allow to influence you. And things like social media and the media in general is a very powerful influence in everyone's life. And it's so easy to be led astray, and as a result, you form these dogmas and these beliefs that
can seriously stifle your ability to achieve what you want to achieve in your life. You know, what Phil's just talked about there is a really great example. 9 times out of 10, when I meet someone who's really overweight, I'm always blown away by the stories that they tell themselves and everyone else around them for the reasons that they can't lose weight, or the reasons that they're out of shape, or that they're unhealthy. And here's the thing. You don't understand how powerful words are. Words are more powerful than thoughts. If you think something over and over again, that is going to affect your future thought processes. But if you actually say those thoughts out loud over and over and over again, it becomes more and more powerful and more effective. So you can use that to your hindrance or your, what's the word I'm thinking of? Benefit. Yeah, benefit, you know. If you're constantly saying to yourself, I'm injured and I've got a leg length discrepancy that's causing my back pain or my hip pain, verbally saying that to your environment, it becomes, you self-manifest that reality.
Humans have always been storytellers, and it's one of the, it's what's passed on information for many, thousands and thousands and thousands of years before we had, writing and whatever. Like, storytelling is such a powerful part of the human experience and the way we communicate knowledge. So if you are telling your story and I guess, it becomes very... It
becomes real. You manifest it. You are going to manifest these things. So on the flip side, you can reprogram your thoughts by telling yourself a different story. And we're going to go through the tools that I've used over my life. And trust me, guys, when I say this, I'm not saying this because I've just read it in a book or just studied it. I've put this shit to the test. A decade and a half to 2 decades ago, I was the most pessimistic, negative person on the face of the earth because I suffered chronic and debilitating depression. I would like wake up in the morning and just want to kill myself. Like, literally, I'm telling you this seriously, And in 2001, I ended up in hospital after a suicide attempt. So for me to turn around now, 2 decades later, or almost 2 decades later, I'm not 41 yet, and to be one of the most positive people in my circle of friends, and to see everything as a glass half full, and to take a seriously empowering stance when I look at everything, there's proof that this shit works, and everything that I've succeeded in my life is attributed to this. It's not a fluke that we have Unity Gym, and it's not a fluke that we have these amazing tribes online of people who, believe what we do and believe in what we do and stuff like that. These things have happened because we've manifested them, and whether you are, challenged by that, which is what we're going to talk about in a sec, when we go down the ego path, or not, or you believe this stuff, that's the first step to making changes, changing the way you perceive and look at all of this stuff and start to understand that this shit's happening to you, whether you like it or not. It's happening to the people around you. And
it can be a force of good, and it can be a force of, a barrier to what you want to get done.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So before we move on, maybe we'll just check in with a few of the comments that's coming through. I think.
Good idea.
We're getting a good little history lesson from Blake over here. Love it. So
I want to read this out from Blakely. Blakely, how you going, brother? It's great to have you. Blakely is one of our admins on our UMS Movement Mastermind and the UMS Online Coaching Tribe. So it's really cool to have him online. He's saying here, computer is just a metaphor. As history goes on, we tend to explain the brain by comparing it to whatever the most complex thing we have around is. It's very, very true. We used to think that the brain has pneumatic pumps. As a parent, this hits home. That's Bioxide saying, trying to teach my son the practice of practice and getting over the it's too hard mentality. Absolutely. Man, one of the biggest lessons that I've got from parenting is, just like seeing how all this plays out and knowing how much what I say on a daily basis and how I behave is impacting and imprinting on my kids, my 2 sons' brains. I'm so grateful to have gone on this journey before becoming a parent, and I can, I guess, attribute that to having kids in my late or mid to late 30s as opposed to in my 20s. I'm very aware of the power of thought, word, and how that manifests throughout my family and at home. So yeah, it's very, very good awareness, brother. Blakely again, then vacuum tubes were invented, bang, and then we thought if the brain as a series of vacuum tubes, neat but of history like to share. Yeah, absolutely, man. We've come a long way in understanding this.
Yeah, that's a good example of like the brain's really complex. What's the most complex thing we could think of?
Yeah, I really want to find the Spinnaker, it's called. SPINNAKER supercomputer. Look that shit up, Blakely, if this stuff interests you. That is literally the first computer that's able to even come close to the amount of computation that we do in our brain. There are a lot of theories about the amount of bits of information that our brain is processing on a constant basis, and they vary dramatically, but it's a lot. Our brain is constantly computing information, from the bits of information, the trillions of bits of information, from our sight to our smell to our hearing to everything. And the reality is that if we were to try to be aware of everything, we would just go into meltdown. So the autonomous systems and programming is super important. Like, we rely on it to get through our day. So I'm not knocking in any way, shape or form the fact that we run on autonomous systems, but all I'm trying to get through to you guys and anyone who's interested on going on this path of embettering themselves or achieving things they haven't been able to achieve in the past is that you often have to sort of say, hang on a minute, what is happening on an autonomous level that might be making decisions for me that is preventing me from achieving what I want to achieve? Because that's so important.
Absolutely. Just on Bioseed's point, where he's talking about, I guess, as a parent and how this kind of impacts, and the idea of embracing the practice. Like, oh man, as a kid, I just like, I kind of went okay through school, but every time I had homework or every time I'd get that feeling of tension, and then I'd be repulsed by, like, you know, how hard it was. And it wasn't until I got into university, I kind of, you know, didn't enjoy the study process until I did massage, and then I had a practical application to apply the knowledge I was learning, and then suddenly, like, learning clicked for me. But before then, I'd always been a bit like, I'd get this tension of, oh, it's hard, and then I'd give myself excuses of, there's, you know, no, like, this doesn't apply to my life, why do I bother? And then, you know, I'd just kind of cruise through and not ever do very well at school. But it wasn't until, I had that change of mind where it's like, okay, here's, I see, like, a practical application for my knowledge, and then I, like, found passion for learning. And I think the current school system of just, you know, I guess, like, there's a really great Seth Godin talk, who's if you don't know about Seth Godin, maybe go check him out. Why do we...
Seth Godin's a beast.
Yeah, What is School For is a talk that he does, and I think I'd really encourage you, guys, to go check that one out, and anyone else who's interested in it. It's just such an interesting look at the way we're teaching kids, and the way that our brains develop through the schooling system. And yeah, I won't know you could get very excited about this, but we'll try and stick to topics. So yeah, check that one out.
Absolutely. And we've got a couple of other people. Jarakichi. I hope I've got that right. Hello from New Zealand. Great topic. Thank you very much. And they've also said at primary school year 5, we had to do test for pull-ups for boys and static hold for girls. I couldn't do one pull-up or static hold. So for 30 years, I held the belief I'm weak, I'm not strong enough. I had a very similar thing. I had a problem with studying, like literally studying, sitting down and reading books. And until the age of 30, I hadn't read a book in my entire life. And it really let me down in topics like English and history in high school. I was very good at the practical things. I aced industrial technology. I did very good in visual design. I did very good in the arts, but I really struggled to read books. I created this belief that I just like had ADD or something, or dyslexia, and I'd read a page and forget everything that I'd just read, and so therefore I just created this belief that I couldn't read books, I couldn't take in information. Now fast forward 20 years, and I read about a book a week on average. So and I read my first book from cover to cover at age 30, just to give you an idea. And most of my knowledge has come from reading books, and then I've been able to connect with people through all of that. and then sort of built a circle of influence around other people who are really knowledgeable too, which has really benefited me over the last decade, you know. So there's another example of how much one can change their story and completely transform and revolutionize who they are, you know. And to give you one more physical example on this before we move on, I fell off a horse when I was about 8 years old and caused quite severe damage to 3 vertebrae in my back. And for my entire youth from that point on, until the age of about 21, I had an injury identity of someone who had broken their back, and therefore I couldn't do half the stuff that we do in the gym now without causing myself severe pain. And the pain was real. You know, there was many days when I was laid out on the floor because even the couch, the angle of the couch was too painful for me to lay down on. And you know, my parents spent a lot of money on physical therapy, that's physio, chiro, and even psychology, you know, because I started to abuse painkillers and all sorts of stuff like that in my teens and late 20s, which I think contributed to the severe depression that I was suffering, and the pain would have done that too. And now fast forward, I'm deadlifting over 200 kilos, and I don't even think about the fact that I had a compromised spine when I was a kid, you know. So I really can't stress how powerful this is, guys, if you're ready to embrace it, you know. So let's jump into some practical applications for this now. How are we going for time? We got about roughly 6 minutes, 5 minutes before we need to wrap up. And make sure on this specific topic, guys, if you're watching and tuning in, get any questions in that you'd like us to dive into, and also any, you know, if you believe this stuff, if you are, you know, willing to sort of accept that this concept of a story which forms and affects the way you think is something that you're willing to embrace, you know.
I'm also interested in people who challenge this idea and
Yeah.
like to, you know, have a different way of looking at it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I would be too, yeah. Okay, so what I had to do in order to kickstart my change and my transformation, going from someone who didn't read books, going from someone who had a compromised body, who felt like they couldn't do certain things.
Let's just change that to compromised mind.
Compromised mind, yeah, absolutely, perfect. What I had to do was that I worked with a mentor who led me down this path, and the very first step was, once I felt ready to do this, he got me to do an exercise that I did over about a 3-day period where I wrote down my story. I wrote down why we identified areas of my life that I felt could use improvement. Finance was a big one for me. I was broke. I was always broke. I had problems with money and wealth. And the blueprint that I'd formed over years from all sorts of things was broken and needed to be changed. My health was a problem. I had a compromised back, and every time I tried to squat or deadlift, I hurt my back, and therefore I never trained legs, and I had a really dysmorphic body because all I did was upper body, and I boxed. My posture was really bad and my shoulders were really bad, and then I decided I wanted to get into breakdancing, and every time I tried to do anything that went onto my hands, like a backflip or something like that, I would hurt my shoulders, and I ended up doing a lot of damage to one of my shoulders in 2006 when I was 26 years old. So my health and my finance were major problems. Then on top of that, I had drug and alcohol addictions that weren't serving me, and I felt like that was, my story was that that's how I dealt with my back pain and things like that, you know. So how did I go about this? I was challenged to write down my story and identify the things that would have influenced those areas of my life that I felt were broken, that weren't serving me well. For my financial side, my father and mother were very bad at managing money, and they had basically passed on their, you know, my dad's idea of getting a, starting a business or getting a car was to just go out and borrow money, borrow as much money as you could possibly get your hands on, because that was easy money to get, you know. And as a result, by my mid-20s, I was in a copious amount of debt with about 5 or 6 credit cards that were maxed out. And my mum wasn't much better at managing money. So that blueprint had been passed on to me by my parents. So I wrote that in my story, you know. My upbringing had led me to believe, based on my boxing coach, who'd had a lot of influence on me over about a 16-year period, that my posture suited boxing, you know, and you needed your shoulders slouched forward for boxing because it was good for protecting your chin and it was good for adding reach to your punches. And that's what he'd been taught from his coaches, and so that all of this stuff went down in my story, and I ended up with like a 5 to 10 page document that was literally like writing the script of my life, but mostly focusing around the areas of my life that I wanted to improve. And that was the very first step, and that's what I challenge every one of you guys to do if this is an area that you think that you could use improvement on. Because the first step, as we spoke about yesterday, in changing something, in setting a goal to change something, is you need a starting point, because your goals and your program and your plan are going to become a roadmap. But if you look at Google Maps and you're trying to get to a destination, the first thing you need to do is identify your starting point, where you're starting from. And that requires you to really identify what are the things that could have influenced my financial state of mind, my state of mind around relationships. If you're having trouble with relationships and you keep falling in and out of relationships and you can't make it last long, what may have influenced you? Did you have parents that argued a lot at home? I don't know what your story is, but trust me, there are things there that are influencing everything about your life. Have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I just think it's this might seem kind of pretty far removed from what a gym would usually be talking about and a physio. But in terms of like giving a bit of a background on the way that physio research is going, it's really changed from a biomechanical model of like what's the structure, you know, get an MRI scan everything and pinpoint some little thing and, you know, then either zap it with TENS machines or do really specific exercise. And it's come much more to the a biopsychosocial model. So the psychosocial side of things is exactly all of this stuff. It's what are the social factors of your life, so your relationships, you know, your family, how much support you have at home, and then what are your work commitments and how does that impact, you know, your sleep and how does that impact, you know, your happiness throughout the day and your time for exercise. And the so the psychosocial, so the psycho factors is exactly all this psychological stuff, your relationship to exercise, your relationship to, you know, what do you enjoy, because it's all well and good to give someone some, you know, weight training exercises, but if they can't stand doing any exercise indoors, and you've got to find ways around that. So I think it's really key to understand this and respect this, because it really plays into pain psychology. And again, I would love to spend a couple of hours talking about pain science at one point.
I reckon we do it off the back of this series. I think it'll slot right in really well. Yeah.
So all of these factors, now when you go, like when I do a physio appointment, it's generally 45 minutes of talking about, you know, some of what the like what happened during the injury, but all of these factors play a huge role in it, because your state of mind, the things that make you happy have a huge impact on how your body's feeling. And the big thing that we're trying to do as physios now is trying to get set up a plan for a lifetime of managing a healthy body, not just this one little acute thing, but, you know, how do you stop it coming back, and how do you continue the activities that make you happy and build up this sort of psychosocial side of your life. So
to jump out of off topic, how good is it to hear a physio talk who's actually trying to prepare people to not have to go and see a physio?
Yeah, that's the goal.
I've dealt with so many physios in my life, and no offense to any physios watching, because I know we do have an audience of physical therapists and physios, but in my opinion, in my experience, I've worked with a lot of physios who seem to just want to get you back and back. Well, that's the thing. I worked with a lot with my spine.
Before starting to work here, I went and did some job interviews, and you know, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then they're talking about the KPIs about, you know, seeing every patient at least 8 times, and it just really didn't sit right with me, because, you know, ideally, like, you know, people self-manage, and I think, I won't go into details because we're running out of time, but I think it's so key to be building up this stuff, and the more you know your story and the more you can be fairly objective about what's influencing you in these different ways, then I guess the more you can identify those barriers, the facilitators to, you know, a lifestyle and to all those healthy behaviors that will, you know, set you up for life.
Yeah.
So
brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's get stuck into this, like spend the time, write out your story, you know, just go through the process of getting these things down.
Good to have had Rad on the cast here. How's the butt going, mate? Now, I want to just quickly let you guys know. So this is step one, guys. Identify your story. Identify what influences you've had over your lifetime that have got you to where you are right now, because I'm sure there's a whole heap of them. And for some of you who are struggling a little bit maybe, it's going to be big. I am a big believer of writing it down, because here's the thing. We're going to rewrite your story over the coming week, and we need a starting point, and we need to know what we're dealing with, okay? So I'd love to see in the comments section just a yes or a doing it, some acknowledgement that you guys are actually going to get off your asses and take some action and do this step, because it's insanely powerful, and it's the best thing to do at the start of the year to sort of reflect on not just the past year. Go deeper than that. Once you've done this once, the reflection will only be the past year. It won't be as big and elaborate. But the first time you do it, I want you to do a reflection of everything that could be affecting you and affecting the things that you want to change in your life. Now, tomorrow, we're going to go deep into what might be troubling you and what might be preventing you from even getting to that point, even getting to the acknowledgement point. And it's going to be really fun tomorrow, because I'm going to challenge a lot of you, and I'm going to challenge a lot of your beliefs, and we're going to talk about ego being your worst enemy. And then we're also going to talk about the concept of cognitive fusion and cognitive effusion, which is your ability to once and for all disassociate from the shit that comes up, emotions, feelings, sensations and urges that are really powerful and really able to sabotage your success. So that's going to be an epic episode that we're going to wrap up this week, and that's going to lay the platform from your story to the things that can really fuck it up, pardon my language, and then we're going to dive into the implementation side of things, the execution and the planning side next week.
This might be a bit of incentive to write down your story. I listened to the podcast where it's Tim Ferriss, and he was interviewing Penn from Penn and Teller the other day. Yep. And Penn has, for the last 10 years, he's barely missed a day where he just does a little diary entry every day. Yep. And then now part of his practice is he writes his diary entry, and then he'll read from 1 year ago, 5 years ago, and 10 years ago. And he, every day he just reads that little excerpt, and he just was talking about how he can really see the parts of his stories that has changed and the ways in which he hasn't changed. It just seemed like a really interesting process. And, every day is a large commitment, but even if you did this at the beginning of every year, and then each year you visited 1 year ago, and then over time it just becomes more valuable, because you can see, have I actually made any ground in, the way I deal with money? Have I made any ground in the way that I, do the food? So it could just be a practice that someone would be, I got really interested in the idea of doing this, because I think it just...
Man, it's super cool.
Getting an insight into your own brain.
And Phil's just dived ahead a week and given you one of our execution strategies, which is diarising every day, and keeping a gratitude diary is the key focus of that, but it grows and grows. Now, I've been doing that for a decade now, and I've been doing this reflection exercise for a decade now, and so I have a shitload of collateral that I can fall back on and look at, and it's incredible the language change over the last 10 years and just how I talk about everything. It's really, really powerful.
So we'll leave it off now. We'll let Richie get out of here and teach
his class. Yeah, absolutely. And guys, I want to know, are you going to do this? Are you going to man up or woman up and front up and take an empowering stance on your life and take control of things, and start by reflecting on what has got you to where you are right now? We'll see you tomorrow.
Or non-binary up 2020.
Non-binary up.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, guys. Take care. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.